If you enjoy listening to adventure stories, then you should visit thedihedral.com. You will find stories from other members of the community and read about climbing, life, and the outdoors. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's connect and climb on!
Climb on! Roll! Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening in. This is Carrot, and I'm so happy to be able to chat with today's guest, Alex Wildman. He's been climbing for years, especially making his mark throughout the Northeast United States. His reputation for kindness, thoughtfulness, and curiosity has endeared him to nearly everyone who has ever had the opportunity to meet with him. In 2016, at just 33 years old, he was diagnosed with stage 3 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And you could read Alex Wildman's story of courage and strength in his biography, co-written with Jeff Markovitz, called The Sharpest End. You can also see him in the Conrad Anchor documentary, Hold Fast. Beyond all his trials, tribulation, conquests, and sends, Alex Wildman is a husband, a father, a nurse, and explorer, and continues to blaze his path with humility and love. And today we're lucky enough to welcome him, along with author, friend, and lit professor, Jeff Markovitz, to the Dihedral podcast. Alex and Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Okay, thank you so much for having us. So cool to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Our pleasure.
I think, a lot of times we've never met, right? I feel fortunate that I was able to read the book. And as I was reading this book, I just felt like we were buddies. I had no right to think that, but the way that it was written and the personalities that you guys pop out, it felt like I was just part of the crew. So a lot of credit goes to you, Jeff, for bringing the reader in and allowing them to feel that way. I definitely did. But I wanted to start off the conversation with you guys, maybe talking about how this book documents what you were going through, Alex. And so obviously to everybody who's listening, I say buy the book, but today hopefully we can find out not necessarily Alex's entire journey from beginning to end, but the journey of the book from the beginning to end. So my first question is, what inspired you guys to write a book about, fighting cancer? I mean, that seems like a lot to undertake during such a trying time.
Yeah, for sure. I just go ahead and say, for anyone that may be on the path or finds themselves in the midst of that same battle, trying to write a book during that time might not be the best objective to try to tackle. But for me, I had been journaling and writing a lot myself to just try to understand my thoughts and feelings. It's so much to try to process, to kind of get hit left field, that really spins your head. So I found a lot of solace just in journaling. But I was journaling for myself, audience of one. Yeah. And then Jeff, approached me and kind of said, "Hey, can we meet up for a coffee?" And, Jeff, do you want to take part of that?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Thanks. I think that, I've been writing for, 20 years now, and mostly what I write is fiction. I've never tried to write long form fiction before. And when Alex was diagnosed, all of his friends and all these wonderful people came out to do these magnificent things for him to support him. Artists drew pictures for, silkscreen T-shirts for a benefit. Rock climbing people, professionals signed posters for sale, and his nutritionist friends sent him like the best cocktails of like fruits and whatnot to get through, illness. And I didn't have any of that stuff. All I had was writing. And so, as Alex suggested, I invited him to coffee to talk to him, just to hang out and see how he was doing. This was right after his first chemo session when he was kind of at his worst. And, and I kind of pitched it, and I was really nervous about doing it, but I said, listen, I think there's actually a pretty cool story here that might link your challenge with cancer and rock climbing, and how the two might overlap in terms of like how, one gets over a difficult send versus how one might get over a difficult disease. And I said, listen, like, I'm not so sure how to approach this yet. I don't know if I really want to exploit you or your issue or anything like that. So, please feel free to, like say no, and we can go back to just drinking expensive coffee in South Philly. But benevolently enough, Alex was like, yeah, that sounds cool. And, then he gave me a bit of an ultimatum after that. And I'll send it back to you, Alex, it was your ultimatum. So I'll let you articulate it.
Yeah, it was, I was so kind of just humbled in general that Jeff thought it was interesting enough to want to write about. It definitely wasn't anything that ever kind of crossed my thought process. So when he had said it, I was like, sure, if that's something that you feel like you want to do, like I would love to, get into this with you. I said, but there is this one kind of contingency ultimatum here that, if we're gonna write about, cancer and climbing, I said, obviously, I'll be the one with the cancer, but we both have to be pretty deep into climbing. And at this point, I had, I am very much a recreational climber. I do not have any sponsorship deals coming my way. But my love for climbing, I think, is just as high up there as everyone else's. And I'd been fortunate enough to do quite a bit of outdoor trips and exploring cool areas and kind of pushing my own limits, so to speak. And at this point, Jeff had kind of gotten the bite and the love of climbing, but had so far only really been able to see as far as the gym would take him. So I said, if you really want to understand what climbing is, I said, you need to go out there and climb. Like, I can't just tell you, like, we have to do this. And I said, so if we're going to do this book, we have to hang out a lot and go climbing. I said, I'll do it on that condition.
Go
like
ahead,
after
Jeff.
yeah, I'm sorry. I just went to kind of like say, so like that kind of led, I was a gym climber, as Alex said, and that led to a couple of years of, him taking me on my first outdoor climb, then my first sport climb, then my first trad climb. And we just like, we, in the process of like interviewing him and talking about this and gaining enough, insight to actually theoretically create a whole book on it. We spent a lot of time outside doing, kind of real fun stuff and really, just kind of developed my own love for the sport in ways that I didn't expect when I, first started climbing in a gym in Philadelphia.
And it's one of the things that you bring into the book that as a reader, you're just engaged. I mean, the emotions are deep in a lot of ways, but you guys talk specifically about some of the routes that you did and some of the fears that you felt there. And you really just did a great balancing act of something that was like really, life altering, if not life threatening, with something that's, I don't know if it's more of a hobby or a lifestyle, but the balancing that you did with the emotions on both of those, it just really drew me in. And I'm sure anybody who's a climber would be drawn in as well. So I wanted to ask you guys, how close were you as far as your friendship before writing the book and after writing the book?
Yeah. Jeff and I had kind of first probably brushed shoulders at like some sort of basement punk rock show here in Philadelphia. Grew up very much as like a BMX kid, punk rock kid. And we were kind of hanging in the same circles, but we weren't texting each other or like purposefully meeting up. But if we saw each other, we had enough mutual friends where we'd stop and chat. And it was one day I was working at REI and Jeff had come in and I was so excited always to see somebody that I knew come in. I was like,
Yeah.
Always like, wait a second, do you love this stuff too? Because we could like hang out and talk about it all the time. It'd be so awesome. And basically Jeff was going out to do the PA section of the AT, and I was there to try to help him get all his kit together for that. And I think that kind of sparked like the embers of like what would become our friendship. It laid the groundwork for like when we saw each other at the climbing gym, it was like, okay, cool, like it's building, like we have a bunch of things in common. And when he approached me with the book, like I for all intents and purposes, like you're writing a story about my life, whether or not I was like being like too like oh, sure, whatever about it. I trusted you enough, Jeff, that I was, kind of implicitly, I gave that trust to you. I don't know, based on some of these occurrences that we had leading up to that.
Yeah, if I could piggyback, I mean, I think it's a really good question because there's almost no way that you can go through the experiences that we've gone through and not get closer because of it. You know what I mean? Not only like were we friends beforehand and we have a lot of things in common, the things that we really enjoy, recreationally or leisurely, but I mean, there's a lot of like intimacy involved in writing someone's story. I mean, we would meet up pretty constantly to have conversations. And I approached this like a journalist. So I was just like, I'm going to get as much info as I can. I'd record his voice. We would have sessions constantly at coffee shops or, food places all over Philadelphia, and then, climb. And so through that, like, it wasn't just about his cancer story. I learned about his father, and I learned about his daughter, and I learned about, aspects of his life and all of this stuff. And then you had to kind of like create a narrative that doesn't exploit a person, but celebrates their experience, but also is honest. And that was really hard. But without a doubt, like that's kind of, made us closer. And then, after the book came out, now we're like, doing these readings and things like that. And I think it's kind of like continuing to build as a good friendship perhaps would. But as I said before, it's just like, this kind of thing. And I'm not even talking about the cancer at all, really. It's just sort of like the way humans bond. And for me, literature has always been a way that connects people over space, over time, et cetera. And this is just another example of how it really just brought two people, to where we are now.
Yeah, that's what I think a person would expect to hear, right? I mean, Alex, you had to be vulnerable. I mean, there's nothing in this book that doesn't seem like it's completely honest and it's completely you. And you had to open up about details in your life that you were going through, that you went through, and that's hard to do. And I think trusting each other is kind of like you said, Jeff. I mean, those are the bedrocks of a good friendship. It'd be strange if I asked that question and you guys were just like, not really, like we were just kind of done with each other. But so I want to dig deeper into just the scheduling of everything. So you're talking to each other all the time. You're having, what I would imagine is hours long conversations. You're hitting Craig's, you're hitting gyms when you're healthy enough to do this. And this is all revolving around work schedules for both of you, family schedules, and chemotherapy. And so I'm wondering how you guys set this schedule up and how you were able to balance it all without just losing your minds. I mean, just any one of those things is enough, but when you put them all together, it seems like it could maybe be too much at certain times. So how did you balance your life and your schedules and chemotherapy and writing a book at the same time?
Yeah, that's a great question. You do have to kind of make sure that you are taking time to balance everything out. While I went through all the chemo that I got, I actually was not able to work. So, I work as a nurse. Then I still currently work as a nurse, which I love. And I was not able to go into work because basically didn't have an immune system. So anything would have made me very sick, and instantly, into a hospital bed, so to speak. So I had quite a bit of free time since I wasn't like going into work. So during that time, it was pretty much, whenever Jeff and I's schedules could align. I don't think we had anything too hard as like every second Tuesday of the month or anything.
Yeah.
But, I think we both had enough interest where we made the time wherever we could find it. It was really important to me kind of going on that journey with Jeff through climbing. I've been lucky enough to bring a bunch of people climbing for their first time. And I take that very, very seriously, like it's a cool moment to bring somebody outside and be like, hey, this is climbing, and like kind of walk them through that and introduce them to that. And when you're conscious of that and you're like, hey, like I'm going to bring somebody rock climbing, like this is this thing that's, given me so much. And I want to be very aware of what this experience is going to be like for this person. And for Jeff, like it was really important for me that I wanted him to get a great essence of what climbing was, so you could really understand that, and what is it about, looking down when you get to the top of the chains, and just taking that second when your heart's beating 1,000 miles an hour, and just breathing and taking it in. I felt like we found quite a bit of time to go and do those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and also relatedly, like, I mean, a lot's changed since then. I mean, like, this has been
Sure.
a 5-year process. So, like the scheduling was such that we had a lot of time to work with it. And a lot of things are really different in our lives. Like, I didn't have any kids when we started this project. I have 2 now.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just like, got really busy. But like, so I'm a teacher, so I had a lot of time off too. And honestly, like, I tried to be easy on Alex with a lot of this stuff. Like, I didn't want to bombard him with it. Like, normally I've written journalistic articles before, not a book. And you don't really have full access to a person all the time. You get in, you get as much info as you
Right.
can, and you get out. In this case, it was kind of just like, I have this like endless well of like the most honest and open person about like these most vulnerable things.
Right.
And so I was trying to be like, kind of easy on him. But whenever there was a gap, or whenever I had an idea to expand the text, like, it was just, I'd call him up like, hey dude, you have some time? And he'd almost always say, yeah. These days we probably can't get out of the house, I mean, the way that our lives are with all our kids and work and stuff. But
more difficult now, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It'd be a lot more Zoom and a lot less expensive coffee, I guess.
Sure.
So I'm wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about the therapeutic value of writing a book as you're going through something what probably is considered traumatic to most people. Alex, you going through it, but Jeff, I mean, I think it's important to remember the family and friends are going through something too, right? I mean, they're trying to be a support system and things like that. And so did you guys find this, although certainly stressful at times, to be some type of therapy as you're marching your way through the whole diagnosis?
Yeah, I can say, for myself personally, that being able to kind of talk things out and sometimes just hear myself say certain things out loud is really important. You can do a lot inside your head or a lot inside of a journal, but sometimes when you hear yourself say certain things, you're able to process it, I think, on another level as well. Like, you've said it now out loud to another person, whether it's that you were scared, or that you had cancer, or that you were afraid that you were gonna to die. And in my case, I was so concerned that my little girl at the time was gonna grow up without a dad, and to say those things, even now, just saying it, like, it's so heavy, but it's important that you recognize that, and I think that you value it, and that you validate those things, and you say, hey, you know what, it's okay, like, that stuff has weight, and it should have weight, and it's valid, and it's okay for that to be scary, or for that to hurt, and for that to keep you up at night. Like, those are valid things to be scared of, or make your palms sweat. So I think for me, being able to really get into all of that out loud with Jeff really helped me process things in a level that I wouldn't have if I was just writing it down in my journal.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say that I had the same therapeutic reaction to it. I mean, I'm not the subject. I also kind of felt like I had to be a professional in it. You know what I mean? Like, my thinking of as a writer was much more sort of monomaniacal. Like, I had to focus on the writing and the craft and like the revision, which took years and stuff like that. But I mean, it's interesting that you would ask that, because in some like real way, that was the thesis of our book in general, and wanting to write it. Like, I think I didn't really want to write a story about cancer. You know what I mean? It wasn't necessarily like an uplifting or exciting thing to write about. But because it happened to a friend of mine, it kind of came to me. And I think, like, the thesis, or like sort of the motivation behind this the writing of the book, was Alex's philosophy on, like, not specifically cancer, but all tribulation, that, like, you can't really, you can't, change what happens to you. You certainly can't control what happens to you, but you have some stake in how you respond to it. And that's sort of like a repeated mantra in the book, because I want people to that have never had cancer, who have never rock climbed in their lives, to read this and feel a therapeutic way about it, because life, hands you difficulty like that, and there's still an opportunity for us to kind of like move through it, and like the same way you would a difficult move on a rock climb or chemotherapy, to try to have like this philosophy around it that makes things more important and meaningful. And I think that's sort of like the center of the book. And I got that philosophy from Alex in our conversations. So like the hope was for it to be something more therapeutic for a reader out there.
Yeah, I think you guys hit the mark on that 100%. How did you know the book was done? Like, was there something? For me, it seems to start something like this and to end it are really challenging things to do. So at what point were you just like, we got it, like this is the book?
Sign the contract.
It's easy
Sounds like it's off in the world, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the book's never done. I mean, I read it right now and I'm like, man, I wish I could rewrite it, and that's true of everything I've ever written.
Yeah.
I don't think, I think it's very difficult for an artist to ever think something's complete. You know what I mean? But like a book has a cover, it has a front and back matter, and so it's really easy to stuff stuff in. And it's good to have like other people, like say an editor or publisher, say when it's done, because if it's just up to us, then it'll never end.
Yeah. Are you guys pleased with how it ended? I mean, not just the story, but were you pleased with how you guys how you finished the book?
Yeah, for me, it's been so difficult, to have, again, like Jeff, spend so much time and energy and thought, and long nights, I'm sure, and long days, really putting everything he had into trying to write this, I think great book. And it's hard to read it and then process it, and I can't read it and not be biased or not go there. Like I can't read the book without crying through most of it. Like I am a very emotional person as is, but like, that is what makes me a really good nurse too. It's what makes me able to connect with people, which I think is one of the most important things about when you're caring for somebody, is connecting with them. But I was very proud of the book, but at the same time, it's somewhat surreal to read a book about yourself. It's a weird thing.
have your face on the cover.
Yeah, no doubt. No, so you kind of brought this up. Just being a nurse. Can you talk about any other overlaps that you see with nursing and climbing? I think that's. I mean, I think compassion is important on both of those fronts, especially somebody like you, Alex, who cares about bringing people in and cares about the sanctity of the sport and the tradition of the sport. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. No, I've always found I've found a really profound connection between nursing and climbing, and nursing and just the pursuit and outdoors in general. With nursing, we're very much taught a lot of critical thinking, but it's a lot of like, you have to be able to assess the situation, come up with a plan, implement the plan, and then evaluate it, and and then leave it on a dime if you have to, and completely reroute everything. So it's a very dynamic thought process, and it needs to be. When I have like a student nurse or like a orientee with me, I always tell them like, hey, like don't get into a routine. Like routine is where you become complacent. Complacency is when you stop paying attention. When you stop paying attention, that's when you miss something. And it's the same thing with climbing. Did you back up your knot? Did you make sure you shut your gate or whatever it is? Like complacency is the thing that gets you. And being able to have that kind of dynamic ability to switch from mindset, quickly on a dime it's everything, I think, with climbing and with nursing as well. you know.
Man, that's and in all honesty, I think with life, I mean, that's just really sound advice. Jeff, you're a lit professor. Do you see any overlaps between teaching and climbing?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think like if you try hard enough, you can probably, overlap almost anything.
That's right.
Um,
That's true.
yeah, but I don't know that maybe not necessarily with just like teaching literature or whatnot, but I mean, I certainly like trying to figure out how to do something that's hard. Like I think that, and not only that, but like enjoying something that's hard. So like I guess what I mean by that is, like teaching is difficult, but I get a lot out of it, and it's a huge passion of mine. It's something that I think about every day and want to do every day. I sometimes joke with my students that like when I got into this gig, I was looking forward to the summers, and now every summer I'm looking forward to the fall. And it's just like such a rewarding thing. And the same thing is true with climbing. Like, most people who might, venture to a crag or to a gym, like, man, this like hurts your fingers. That's kind of dangerous. You get to the top and there's no prize. Why do we do it? But like there's something about like struggle, that you are innately just linked to and passionate about, that I think is really like kind of makes life worth living. And I always try to look for those things, and I want to instill that in my children as well. Like whatever you're passionate about, just like go hard on it. So for me, like both climbing or really anything outdoors, whether it's hiking, climbing, skiing, whatever, outdoor life, it's difficult, oftentimes hard on the body or whatever. But like if you love it, like you love the pain of it too. And I think this is true of teaching. Because sometimes things don't go well with teaching. But if you love it, like you dedicate yourself to it, and as such, you get more out of it, and you can give more back to it.
That's perfect. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that either. Thank you, guys. So I want to come back to the book in a second, but before that, I think you guys are giving really interesting and kind of profound answers. I wonder if you could each speak a little bit about just the climbing community. What is it about the climbing community it's just different, and it's inviting, and it's magnetic? So I'm wondering if you guys had any thoughts on just what it is about the climbing community that's so reassuring and just fitting for climbers in general.
I think for me, I didn't know about a climbing community until I realized that I had instantly lost it. And what I mean by that was it was probably Real Rock 6, this is years ago, and it was playing in Philadelphia, and it was being put on by the Wharton Business School Mountaineering Club in this huge auditorium. And I remember going in there by myself, because I had to see this film, and I go in there, and in this big auditorium, there's probably like maybe 200, 250 other climbers. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't know there were that many climbers in the area. Like, started getting, pretty like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like, there's a lot of other people here. And we watched the film. We were all laughing at the same time. All of us would gasp at the same time. Like, you could tell we were all kind of on edge. And at the end of it, the lights went on and people got their jackets and left. And I remember leaving and getting out onto the street and looking around, and, couldn't tell anybody from anybody else, and being like, oh my gosh, like, that was it. I was just with this group that I felt like I had this deep connection to, and it's gone. Like, how do I get that? How does that, where do I find that again? And, I was lucky enough to talk to a good friend of mine, Sean Ryan, and tell him like, hey, I think we should do Real Rock. Like, I think I'd like to try to put that on. I'd like to try to do these events. And
yeah,
Sean told me how it wasn't going to work and it was a bad idea. And then he said, but if we do it this way and we change that, and we ended up having this great kind of dynamic back and forth relationship, and ended up starting the Philadelphia chapter of the American Alpine Club, and ran that together for 7 years and put on tons and tons of events in Philly with the sole purpose of bringing together climbers for a community and giving people the experience of like getting to come together and, being able to be like, hey, there's other people that get stoked on the same crazy thing that you love, and like, you're not alone. And it was so special. I'm so very proud to have been a part of the Philadelphia chapter of the American Alpine Club. And, you know, it's the AAC has a very special spot in my heart. And, you know, it's a incredible thing to go up on a wall, however tall it may be, right? From a single pitch to multiple, and look up at it and think about what it's going to be like up there, and, you know, kind of be in your head, and then to find a group of people that you can relate that to and talk to about that. It's a really powerful thing to find other people that can kind of share this really unique, special thing that we all find ourselves crazy about. So I don't know. I think the climbing community in general, you know, tends to have a lot of people that are deep thinkers, that are very passionate and care a lot about other people, because you want to see the person at the end of the climbing rope that you're belaying be successful. You want other people to do well.
Yeah.
You want everybody to succeed. Like it's a very neat pursuit. And by doing so, you learn not only skill sets that can unlock keys to take you anywhere in the world, but you unlock deeper insights to yourself when you can apply the same lessons to adversity, you know, years later in a scenario that you don't choose. You know, I've had climbing taken from me so many times through, you know, injury or illness. And each time I've had to take a break from climbing, it's just made me reflect on, you know, how much it continues to teach me, especially when I can't do it. And to be able to share that with the community and get other people involved in that, you know, I think it teaches this really deep level of self-reliance. And then also that not only can you be self-reliant, but the need for others, right? And they both exist in the same space, you know? Yeah, I love climbing.
Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I apologize in advance if I get all philosophical and or metaphysical on you.
Bring it. We love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just really like always interested in how humans come together for, like, you know, in similar interests and passions. And climbing is a great example of it. I mean, a lot of my good friends that I have today, I met through climbing. Like, I have like my trad climbing friend that I go to gunks with. I've got my sport climbing friend that I go to this place called Birdsboro with. You know, I've got my bouldering friend. You know what I mean? It's just like, you know, and I met them all at a gym, you know, at one point or another. And that's kind of like just like you know, you have two people who are, or multiple people who are crazy about the same thing for no reason. And then you begin to realize that, like, there's this connection there. And that's true, you know, of all things. I've got my skiing friend, I got my backpacking friend, you know what I mean? It's really neat to just connect in that way. And I think, like, one of the big themes of the book is about human connection, you know, and how, you know, people tend to like gravitate when the chips are down. And so, I mean, it's no surprise that in Alex's case, the climbing community kind of came out like hard for him. You know, like, here's this dude that like loves climbing. You can see it on his face when he climbs, how much he loves it. And he's taken so many of us, including myself, out and just like belayed us on like the lamest 5.3 ever to like get our feet wet, you know, and like lets me like climb it 8 times in a row while he's sitting there like belaying uncomfortably in a harness, you know what I mean? He's like watching me do this thing because he knows that he's generating a love in somebody else. And that's, you know, clearly when you know, that was reciprocated when he was ill. So, I mean, I think it just kind of shows, like, you know, like when people are enthused by a similar thing, it's a bond, and you know, you kind of like feed off that.
Yeah, I think that was, for me at least, one of the most emotionally powerful, I guess, scenes of the book is when the climbing community sort of came together. Again, without giving too much, it was great. It moved me a lot, and I was the reader. Alex, you're the one who was actually going through it. I can't even imagine how touching that must have been for you. Another, I hope it's not a surprise, but another feature of the book is Conrad Anker wrote the foreword, and you guys became friends. Like, take us through that. Like, it was, again, without giving away too much, like, what happened?
Yeah, no, you know, kind of as mentioned earlier, like I worked for REI for many, many years. which was awesome. For being in South Jersey, it's not like there's a gear shop nearby. So to be able to kind of work in a place where you're able to push that gas pedal into the outdoors and, really like love something to whatever extreme you want and feel like people are encouraging you. REI was like a really important spot for that. In 2010, Conrad was coming through with a film, and they had it was put on by Nat Geo and REI, The Wildest Dream, about finding Sir Malroy's body on Everest.
Mm-hmm.
And they, people at REI were like, "Hey, Conrad's gonna be in town for like a few days. Could you like hang with him and like take him around, like take him to his events and like just like be like his dude?" And I was like, yeah, of course.
Think about
like,
this.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. And we did. I was lucky enough to have that experience and spent like about 2 days with Conrad, and he couldn't have been any nicer. And but there's this kind of like profound wisdom to Conrad that was unmistakable. As this guy that's had such an incredible life journey in so many different facets, right? Like so many ways, like such a complex life. And to be able to be there with him. I remember he had said to me at one point, he said, "Hey, this is in 2010. He said, when you're ready as a climber, you should try to make your way to Patagonia, like try to go to Patagonia and, cut your teeth." And I was like, "Oh, all right." And I was like, I got a long way to go before I get there. And, fast forward to 2016, or really 2015, I had a friend that was living in Yosemite, guiding out that way. And he had hit me up, and he knew that I loved the winter. And he was like, "Hey," he's like, "I'm thinking about going to Patagonia. Would you want to come with me? I know you like to suffer in the cold." And I was like, "Oh man, that sounds great." And I had, spent a long time kind of getting ready for this trip. And on the way getting ready, I kind of remembered in my mind, I said, right. Conrad had said, like, "When I'm ready." So I sent him a message. It was like, "Hey," I was like, those words, did not fall short on me. Like, I'm going, like, I don't know if I'll climb anything, but I'm going to go. Like, step one, like, be there. Like, you'll never climb it if you don't ever show up.
True.
And then it was literally 2 weeks before we were going to leave it. We were leaving February 14th. It was January 28th when, I ended up waking up and kind of being sick and going to the hospital. And, kind of found myself on this other path, and, Patagonia started to fade away. And somewhere within going to, doctor's visits and, trying to formulate this brand new plan for figuring out what was going on with me. In my mind, it was like, right, I should message Conrad back, because I don't want him to think that I have this like trip report coming up, or like,
yeah, right.
I don't know why I thought, like, I felt compelled though to like message him, and I hadn't heard back from him at this point. And I was just like, "Hey, like, I'm not going to Patagonia." It turned out, I ended up getting sick and kind of crazy, but I have cancer. And I was like, "But you've been a big inspiration. Thank you so much." And, I'm going to take that same passion towards this. And it wasn't even a few hours later that I heard back from him and sent me this beautiful message. And kind of at the end of it, he said, "Hold fast, all storms pass." And, from that message, that was kind of this, seed that blossomed this friendship and this journey that we both embarked on from there, that, led us to climbing El Cap together, which sounds crazy, but, Conrad showed up in my hospital room. I was getting, my first infusion was 96 hours long. It was
God,
pretty aggressive cancer. And, they're pumping all this stuff in, and Conrad just happened to be in Philadelphia and was like, "Hey, can I come visit?" And I was like, "Well, I'm in the hospital getting chemo." And he's like, "Yeah, just give me the address." And just like that, there he was, and spent a bunch of hours with me. You know, I work with some of the nurses. I work at that hospital now in Philadelphia. It's Hospital University of Pennsylvania, or HUP, or UPenn. It's a great hospital. I'm biased, but it is a great hospital.
Yeah.
And I work as a float nurse. So I work anywhere in the hospital. And I've worked with a bunch of those nurses when I work on an oncology floor that took care of me, and they still remember that.
Oh, wow, that's so cool.
You know, and still reference that. So, you know, that not only made a big mark on me, but like, you know, Conrad made a mark on so many others by kind of showing, you know, just how generous and kind of a person he is. You know, I was completely floored when he showed up in the hospital. You know, climbing El Cap with him, obviously crazy, right?
It's crazy.
It's crazy, right? Like, but to have him show up in my in the hospital room when I was going through the cancer, nothing will ever top that.
Yeah,
you know, that showed me that, you know, kindness is more important than anything else. You know?
No, absolutely. And it's not like he didn't have to do that. You know what I mean? Like, he's a busy guy who's got a million other things to do. It just speaks to the type of person that he is.
And if that's not enough too, like 2 years later, we say, hey, can you write a foreword to this book?
Right.
And he's like, sure. And here it comes in an email. I mean, like, that was pretty amazing.
Unreal. So as the person more or less putting this book together, were you pleased, or did you have to send it back and be like, look, I've got some notes for you about this forward, or was it pretty pristine?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, I did like the editing thing that I would do for any text through it. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like the basic line by line type stuff, but I kind of left it the way it was. I mean, I'm not going to touch it.
That would be the same way.
Come on.
Conrad Anker, he's an interesting guy. We had him on the show almost a year to the date. And it was, you know, interviewing is you just talk with people, but there's certain people you talk to, and it's almost like you got to step back and just understand the footprint they left on the climbing world and on the world in general. And so it was a tough interview for me, because I kept just like fanboying out, and it's like, what the hell? I'm talking to Con. I'm like looking behind him to see like, oh, what does he got hanging on the wall? Stuff like that. What a guy. So I'm wondering if I can get you guys to maybe give some advice to maybe people who could be going through something similar, you know, as a patient and survivor, and as a support group. Let's say there's somebody who gets a similar diagnosis, or a life-altering diagnosis, and it's, you know, day 3, day 2. I mean, hold fast is spectacular. But what else would you guys say to somebody in that position?
You know, I happen to be in that opportunity, in that scenario quite often at work. You know, I see people dealing with adversity every single day. And a lot of it is really very profound and saddening. And, you know, there's not a good solution. And, you know, these conversations tend to be, you know, when appropriate. I think I try to always tell people that how you feel is valid, right? Your feelings are valid, and you're here, and I'm happy to be spending time with you. And, you know, while you can't choose the things that happen to you, you can choose how you deal with it. And if you can find a way to still be happy in your head, then man, you're a lot further along than a lot of other people, because life will continue to throw you curveballs and adversity. But you know, if you can't find a way to just be happy inside your head, it's going to be difficult in general. So, you know, I think that it's important for people to remember that, you know, you're worth the time it takes. You know, I think a lot of times people tend to feel burdened by how long something's going to take to to deal with, or like how it will inconvenience other aspects of their life. But hey, you're worth everything. You're worth all the time that it takes. You're worth all of the hard work from all the people that are going to help you, and all the people that, whether you're in a hospital or wherever it is, like I'm happy to go and help people every day. Like I'm so, I tell my patients like, hey, I'm happy to be here. Like I'm happy to come and help you. Like I chose this. Like it was not an accident that I'm here. Like, happy to help you,
Right.
and you're worth it. Like let's make today the best we can, and if sometimes you just take it day by day, sometimes you take it hour by hour, sometimes you got to take it minute by minute. But it's okay to be scared. It's okay for it to be overwhelming, but let that in, look at it, see it, give it its value, and then say, what's next? Let's keep going, and again, I learned that stuff from being outside. Something bad happens, you're in the winter and you're on a mountain, and you better figure out a way to kind of make peace whatever the bad scenario is, and have that emotional breakdown when you're in the car driving home, because right there in the moment you need to kind of stay focused and get through it. And I feel very fortunate to have the experiences that I've had, because they really helped me when I needed it the most. Long answer, sorry.
I mean, I don't know. I think that like I might be plagiarizing myself here from the book, but like I think that when you're diagnosed with something as terrible or as horrifying as a potentially terminal disease, it really makes you focus on the things that matter in life. And I think one of the conclusions I came to in the book that became part of the discourse was that like life doesn't mean waking up and breathing and eating. You know what I mean? Like that's being a biological life form, but there's things that are much more profound that you can tap into. There's things that you can love and be passionate about. And climbing is an example of that. But in the book, we talk about family a lot too, and friendship, and these things that like are worth living for, not just surviving to battle the next disease that comes your way, but like to actually live. Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of hokey a little bit, but it's also kind of redundant. Like we hear this a lot in like self-help narratives, which this book is not. You hear a lot of people just trying to be like positive or whatever, and I'm not trying to do that either. You know what I mean? Like it's not a positive situation that's happening in the book, at least. But I think it's my advice for somebody that's encountering any tribulation at all would be to look to the things that you love. And Alex does this in the book, right? Like the first thing he does after his chemo is he goes backpacking with his girlfriend, now wife. You know what I mean? Like he had a chemo session and we had the gym, you know what I mean? And then be like, hey, I can't go hardcore right now because I'm on blood thinners and I can't get cut. I'm like, what the hell? You should be on the gym right now, But like that's the whole point, you know what I mean? You don't overcome anything, whether it's a disease or a bad day, you know what I mean, just to get to the next one. You do it because you want to engage with the things that matter to you. So for me, when these things happen to me, and they happen quite a bit, not cancer, but other stuff, right? I mean, everybody in the world right now is going through a terrible pandemic and has been ripped away from normalcy. Just get back to the things that you love. It could be your family, it could be your work, it could be a good book, a good podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. I mean, like link up to it, right? Because that's the stuff that makes you not want to elongate your life, but actually like have the life.
Yeah, that's awesome, you guys. Thank you for that. I as I was prepping for this talk, I did a little deep digging. This is a little bit lighter. I mean, not that deep. You don't have to worry about like skeletons coming out or anything like that. But I did jump on Rate My Professor, and I found a couple of comments about Jeff. So Alex, I'm going to read one to you, and I'm wondering if you could speak to this comment. Right, validating it, which it sounds like you will, but I think it'll be fun to hear your opinion on this. This is from a student. I don't have a name. This is, again, Rate My Professor. I literally can't say enough about Jeff. He is down to earth, relatable, and is a social justice warrior. The most respectable thing, however, is that he legitimately cares about his students. I took him in 2019, and we're still in communication. He never hesitates to write a recommendation, edit an essay, or give me advice. Best part of college.
Yeah, I mean that's Jeff. Jeff. I always knew when I was with Jeff that Jeff was present. Jeff wasn't somewhere else. Jeff was with me, and he was present with me. And for someone else to acknowledge you and be present with you is, I think, really meaningful. And I always kind of relish that time with Jeff because I know he's present during it. And I think that's, not only what they're kind of getting at there, but, he's reliable and all around great guy. So.
Spoiler alert, I actually wrote that post myself.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I didn't mean to. No, what's funny, I want to say something though that's funny about that website is things have changed for me since I started teaching. I've been teaching for 15 years now. And 15 years ago, that website had this quality where like you could tell if a teacher was hot or not, like by virtue of a chili pepper icon next to the name. They've gotten rid of that, thankfully, over the years. But so I'm 40 now and nobody's giving me any kind of chili peppers anymore.
Chili peppers
like 25, right? But what's funny now is now people are actually focusing on my classes and how I teach. And before it was just like looks alone, and that's how people would choose their classes. Yeah, thanks for saying that, Alex. I do appreciate the
I would rate Jeff 5 big burly beards, and that's,
totally. Easily. Yeah, definitely. We need to post this video somewhere.
I'm shaving as soon as it's over.
The one thing surprising about that comment, Jeff, was what exactly did it say? That they respect you because you care? Do you think professors don't care as much as the students need them to?
No,
is there something going on?
No, most of my colleagues that I know care very much. I think that it's just like, being a professor, like in our society, is sort of like this elevated status, but it's just, and to some extent, like, there's good professors and there's bad professors. Like there's good dentists and bad dentists, good crossing guards and bad crossing guards. You know what I mean? Like, I think that sometimes we run into really, bad teachers or teachers that just aren't really built for it. Maybe they're brilliant, but they don't know how to teach. And that's
such a good point.
You know what I mean? And that's largely what got me teaching the way that I teach right now is I actually think about more the bad professors that I've had instead of the good ones. And I try to do the exact opposite, and so
that's great.
Yeah, I think most people care. I also teach at a community college, you know what I mean? So like there's no like meritocracy where I teach. You don't have to publish to be there. Most of my colleagues want to be there because the work we do benefits, people for whom education isn't traditionally offered. We don't work at a big university where like, we get paid a ton of money and there's like a lot of esteem. People like scoff at community colleges, and we're proud, you know what I mean? Like we think that we're uplifting communities that traditionally don't go to higher education. So I think like, at least in my circles, like the people are very, very conscious of the work that we do and the values therein. I know that there are great professors and there are professors that just write it in, and the same like in everything, it's just, it's how people are.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Jeff, I was also stalking Alex a little bit, and so I was on Rate My Nurse, and so I was wondering, I found a quote. I was wondering if you can comment on this quote. So it says, "Nurse Alex has the bedside manner of Florence Nightingale. This guy is an angel sent from heaven with a tremendously manicured beard and the scent of chocolate chip lavender berries sprinkled on cherry blossoms. I'm 74 years old, but if I could go back and rename my firstborn Alex Wildman, I would do it in a heartbeat."
Yeah, so I wrote that one too. That's funny. I didn't even know Rate My Nurse was a website. That's
it's not. I totally just made that
up. Man, that's a good one. I like that.
I was just hoping that I didn't even know what a lavender berry is, but I figured Jeff, you could speak on.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that what people might need to hear though is that like Alex hasn't been a nurse his entire life. Like he came to this as an adult. You know what I mean? In other words, like he'd done other things. You already heard that he worked at REI into his 20s, etc. So, and I think what happened, and Alex might be able to clarify this, but like, he took some like, survival courses or something like that in the outdoors. And then I think just developed this like incredible affinity for like the value that a nurse can have in someone's life. And then pursued it late in life. He went back to school to become a nurse. So that's a very conscious thing. It wasn't like, a lot of people get into nursing because there's like a high pay, and you can, it just seems like something that we can do, you know what I mean, to satisfy sort of my economic needs. But with Alex, it was just like, no, like I know that this is something that I could be good at. His skills and his personality traits would go right into caring for people. And most of us know this. I mean, like, I've had a couple kids, I never saw a doctor. It was all nurses. You know what I mean? Like, every time I'm treated with the medical staff, it's all nurses. Like, they're the people that are really, I'm not trying to diss doctors or anything like that, but I'm just trying to say,
No, not
nurses are the people that like interact the most. It's more like the most humane kind of medicine, medical practice. And then Alex had this like notion somewhere, in his adult life, that like, my personality traits would link with that humanity. And it's obviously so true. I mean, like, we would all be so lucky to have this guy like walk into a room when we're in our most vulnerable.
I agree. I mean, we just met, and I couldn't. Yes, I couldn't agree more. So you guys, we try to end with something a little bit amusing. So maybe you guys could help me and the listeners out with this. On our website, we have a theme called Craggies and Snackies, where we kind of find a crag, and then we find a restaurant nearby that we think would be a great complement to that place. And so I was wondering if you guys could maybe tune us into a couple places in Philly. Maybe you could name a great place to climb, and then a great place nearby to go get some coffee or eat afterwards.
Jeff, why don't you take the first crack at it?
Yeah, I mean, so Philadelphia is a flat city. I mean, we're in the Delaware Valley. I mean, like, we don't really have a lot of like climbing, but there are some spots. A lot of times they're like in quarries or something like that. My favorite spot to climb is the Birdsboro Quarry. So there's a Birdsboro, Pennsylvania. It's about an hour outside of Philadelphia, and you've got hundreds of sport climbs in this man-made quarry.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and it's a really, really awesome spot. It's actually the first place that Alex ever took me to lead climb, and I've taken like 10 people on their first trips to lead climb there since. And it's just a really rad. There's actually a couple multi pitches and stuff like that. It's a really cool spot. I mean, it's man-made, and the rock is crap, but I mean, it's it's outside. It's beautiful, and it's really fun. Anyway, where to eat? I mean, Birdsboro, Pennsylvania. I mean, shout out to anybody that lives there, but I don't know where you eat there. There's I don't know, like a convenience store, which we always stop at, like on the way there, like a gas station.
Let me help you out. We did one in Florida, which was also flat, and I had to have people drive 3 hours to the closest restaurant that I approved of. So you don't have to make it right in town. It could be a drive back to Philly if you want. If you just want to shout out a buddy.
Drive back to Philly, yeah, for sure. Like, Philadelphia's got like some of the best food, in any place in the world. So I mean, like, when you're done at Birdsboro, take a ride into town. Yelp it up and figure out some of the best spots in Philadelphia. There's tons of them.
Sounds great. All right, Alex, what do you got?
I'd say that, if we're talking about climbing and eating in Philadelphia, then, you're climbing at one of the gyms, right? Like, as Jeff had pointed out, you're probably not, there's nothing to climb really.
Yeah.
It's flat. So, we have a lot of great gyms that recently opened, and some that have been opened. But I'd say if you're looking for like a really good community vibe, Tufa's is a really cool like bouldering gym where everybody's like super positive and super friendly, and everybody's looking out for each other there and trying to like build a community feel. I think that's very cool. The Cliffs, we have a Cliffs in Philly, which is also a really cool, welcoming space. Like, every time I go in there, I feel like I end up making a new friend.
Nice.
So very neat. And then I'd say if you wanted to go and get something to eat afterwards, if you're lucky enough to get a table at this place called Miss Rachel's Pantry, it's a vegan restaurant. Everything they make there is ground up, made from scratch, and it is insanely good. I eat a little bit of everything, but I would be happy to find myself at a table there, once a week. It's a really, really good spot. Full disclosure, one of my buds is a chef there, but that's just like kind of bonus points for me because I get to like sample some of his food.
That's awesome.
Delicious.
That's a good friend to have.
Can I piggyback?
Yeah.
Can I piggyback on that one? Yeah, the Cliffs is in Philadelphia, is in Chinatown too. So like, you got like all these amazing Chinese restaurants that are right like walking distance. And I want to shout out Lee Hao Fook's,
okay,
which you can get one of the best like oyster hot pots I've ever had. Like, a block from the climbing gym in Chinatown.
Yeah, Philadelphia. You guys are doing it right out there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that more or less wraps up some of the questions or most of the questions I had, but I want to, before we go, make sure that everybody listening knows where they can get a copy of the book.
Yeah, so you can go right to the publisher's website. It's Sharp End Publishing, and that's not on purpose.
That's
that
awesome.
the book's called The Sharpest
That's
End,
so
and they're
cool.
when I contacted them, I was like, you guys might not want to take a look at this book because it's the names are too close,
Right.
but thankfully they did. But yeah, so Sharp End Publishing is the name of the publisher, and you can get the book from there. I've got a website. It's jeffreysmarkovitz.wordpress.com, where you can also, there's a link to it there. And I think there's probably a couple other places that you can find it, but that, you can also Google it. I think most of you kids out there know how to do that.
You can kind of mega, you can pick it up at some REIs. REI
nice.
to buy a limited quantity. So they're offered, I think 8, maybe 10, possibly 12 different REIs in the Northeast. And then potentially the flagship store out in Seattle, Washington. So I told them, hey, you get that book out there, I'd be happy to fly out.
Yeah, no doubt. So is there anything else before we go that you guys want to plug or promote or anything like that?
I don't have any promotions. I just want to say thanks. I really appreciate it. This has really been a fun conversation, and I really appreciate, having us on.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that 100%.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Garrett. It's I really am a fan of the podcast in general. So it's really cool and really special to be here. And I feel nothing but gratitude. Thank you so much.
It's been a blast. I have one plug before we go. If you need to take a lit class, you got to look up Jeff Markovitz. Chili peppers all around.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. I appreciate it, guys. Great talking to you.
Pleasure's mine.
Thank you.